Hey guys, so I have personally kept chicken in quite a number of different forms. That's broilers, that's broiler breeders, layer breeders, commercial layers, dual purpose chickens, and even local chickens. I've kept all of them. I've also kept goats and sheep, cattle, and I've also helped a lot of people give them advice and managing in terms of piggery. So if you're probably sitting down and think to yourself, what livestock should I be looking after? What kind of livestock is befitting of the place where I am or whatever I want to do? Well, in this video, I'm going to be talking about that because right here, as you can see behind me, is a poultry farm. But on the land that I'm standing on right now, I'm going to be planting grass to feed goats. I do have goats, maybe about 60 or 70 goats and sheep that I want to, multiply and grow in number so that I can utilize them for meat. I want to be selling them for meat, yeah? So I want to utilize this area right here in order to, grow some pastures that I can utilize to, feed the goats and the sheep that I do have somewhere else. So stick around. If that's you, I'm going to help you come up with a very great decision. So ideally, for you to understand what works best or what's going to work best for you, you're going to have to understand the dynamics of what you are raising or what you want to raise. Yeah, you want to understand the complexities or the simplicity of whatever you're going to be raising. Yeah, so whether it is goats and sheep, whether it's cattle, whether it's chickens. Yeah, now I'm quite the expert when it does come to chicken rearing. Again, you guys can see the poultry houses right there in the distance. Yeah, I'm quite the expert when it does come to poultry because I've been doing it for a while. I'm also quite well versed with raising goats and sheep because I've raised them in big numbers for a while. Also, I know a bit of raising cattle because I've raised them for a while. Yeah, I'll tell you that when it does come to ease of management, poultry is the most complicated. Yeah, it's the most complicated. It's interesting that they are the smallest in terms of size, but they are the hardest to manage. And quite simply because each and everything that affects them is in such a way that very small minute inputs or very small variables actually lead to very huge consequences. Yeah. So if you change the feed ration for 2 days, you're going to have your production decrease. If you change the feed ration for 2 days, if you're doing broilers, you're going to have your weight decrease. They're not going to reach the target weight that you want for just 2 days. Yeah. On the contrary, if you're doing goats and sheep, if you're doing cattle, you can be a bit lazy, a bit lax for a few occasions, maybe for a week if it's cattle, for a few days, and they really won't punish you. They'll get sick, but as soon as you get the medication and give them, they'll slowly start to recover. Yeah. When it does come to poultry, if you're not careful, if you make a mistake, the chickens are going to die. They're going to terribly die. Yeah. That is one thing. The second thing that you need to understand is that poultry generally requires way more labor in terms of management. It requires so much of your physical presence, so much of your physical presence. Yeah. First of all, you're going to need way more labor because you need to keep feeding the animals. You give them food at particular times. You're going to go through a period called brooding. If you're going to be doing it on a commercial scale, like I am, brooding is that period where you're raising the animals and you're literally the mother of the animals, the mother of the chickens. Yeah. So you give them food, you give them water, you give them heating, you close the area so that you don't have so much wind coming in. You're literally looking after them like you're the mother of the chickens. Yeah. That time is the brooding period. It's quite complicated if you're just starting out and you don't have an idea. Once you get to learn it, it becomes really easy, like 1, 2, 3. Yeah. It becomes really, really easy. And for us, that's what it has become for us. It has become a really easy thing, but starting out, it's not as obvious. But once you get the idea of it, it becomes quick and something that's very doable. Yeah? A lot of times people come and ask me and they're like, hey doctor, should I be brooding chickens myself, or should I get people to brood for me, or should I buy animals that are already at point of lay? I always tell them, man, just go through the motions of learning how to brood yourself once, and then after that it will be done. After that you won't need anything else. Yeah, so just go through those motions once and then you'll be done with it. Yeah, so that's something that I personally advise people. But again, like I've said, you don't have any of that when it does come to goats. Yeah, so the mother produces the goat and they will look after their goat. The cow produces their heifer and they look after their heifer. You need to feed the mother to make sure that they have milk or things like that. But it's much easier to look after the young of those animals than it is to look after the young of, chickens. Yeah. So again, looking after them is quite more complicated. So you guys can see this land right here. Yeah. As you can see, we have plowed it. Yeah, it looks quite nice. So we've done a first plow, as you can see. It was quite, I wouldn't say bushy, but it had a bit of grass, as you can see, and people were grazing their animals on the land. And the whole time, because I've already told you guys that I'm going to be, putting chicken houses, just like those chicken houses, yeah? I'm going to be putting chicken houses on this land. That was the plan, yeah? And the whole time I had that plan, but in addition to that, I was thinking to myself that, well, I'll just let the land bare, because growing maize in this area just doesn't make sense, yeah? So I told myself I'll just let the land bare and then utilize it to, just put chicken houses. But then recently I got an idea and I was like, instead of just letting the land go bare, why not plant grass over here? Yeah, why not plant grass that I can give to my goats and sheep? Yeah, over time. And by the time I need to utilize all the land in terms of putting poultry structures, it will be quite a while from now. I don't know. Because I was thinking to myself, I'm only going to put up my very first structure in this place, I think in July, and then another one probably in December. And both of those can go in this area right here, which, is quite different. It's not like an area which is being tilled. And then later on next year, I could probably put 4 structures the other side. So before I need to ever utilize this land for, I don't know, anything else, I could have grown quite a number of alfalfa, sprouts or crops or whatever, yeah, in this place. So I thought to myself, I think this is actually a very good idea, yeah. I can actually plant here grass. So I decided that I'm going to plow the area. So they're plowed. I'm quite late in terms of the rains, but it's alfalfa, it's grass, yeah. Now, of course, it does require rain, but it should be able to handle. The other thing is I need to, bring water to this area, yeah. So I'm going to have to get the guys to, connect water and bring it to this side of the farm. But I think we're going to work out. So I want to show you guys, the area that I actually took over. So this area right here, as you guys can see, has some trees that have been cut down. Yeah. So I think I've shown you guys before this location here. This is the former house of the person who sold me the land, and he had quite a number of trees on the land. Yeah. And yesterday but one, he decided to cut down the trees. Yeah. So when I bought the place, I really didn't need the trees. Yeah. Because as you guys can tell, I'm going to be putting poultry structures here, and poultry structures and trees just don't work together. Yeah. It's useless for me to have poultry structures and have trees here. The poultry structures are just going to take up all the space, and they need proper ventilation and aeration and all those kinds of things. So the trees are really not necessary. Also, the trees harbor wild birds if they are too close to the poultry houses. So I'll certainly plant my own trees, but I didn't need them here. Yeah. The location, exactly where they are placed, just doesn't favor what I'm going to be doing with the place, which is the poultry structures. So he cut down the trees. This was a mango tree, as you can see, which he cut down. You can see it right here. Yeah. This was a mango tree. Other trees that were cut down. I think this is like the biggest tree around, a mango tree that was cut down. This is its stump, as you can see. Yeah, it has been cut down. So this is the land going all the way down. And so the first few poultry structures will be around this area. I think this was another mango tree, or a jackfruit tree. I think this was a jackfruit tree that was cut down. Yeah, it was a jackfruit tree, because I can see some jackfruits. Yeah. I can see some jackfruits that were on the tree. You can see them right here. Yeah. So this was a jackfruit tree that was cut down. And I think he's going to use them to burn charcoal, because the way he has piled up, the stuff makes it look like he's going to burn charcoal. So we still have this shrub right here that he also needs to cut down, because I honestly don't need it. Yeah. I personally was also going to cut down all the trees, but it's been a good thing that he has helped me cut them down. He wanted to sell them to me. He wanted to sell me the trees, but I was like, what? What for? I'm not going to, I could have paid for the trees, but I'm not going to utilize them. Yeah, I'm going to use them. Just let him cut them himself, and he takes them. Yeah, this is an avocado tree, which I think he's going to leave. I don't know if he has chosen to leave it or not. Yeah, it's an avocado tree here. I don't know if it's properly placed. It might end up going to, based on what I choose to do with the farm. So then, as you have already seen from what I've shown you around the area, raising goats and sheep requires quite an amount of space. It's not like raising chickens, yeah? Raising chickens, I've already told you guys that this area, which is just over an acre, is going to keep for me over 20,000 chickens. Just over an acre, yeah? I'm going to keep 20,000 chickens. And that's using deep litter, meanwhile, yeah? So if I'm going to be using cages, if I were to use cages, I'll probably use or keep way more chickens over here, especially if I'm going to be using, you know, the H-type cages where the stocking density is much higher, you know, in the spacing. I would use, or I would keep here way more chickens, maybe 40,000 chickens in this area, yeah? So first of all, what you need to understand is that if you're going to be raising goats, you're going to need land. Now, I do know people who are raising goats without having so much land. They are raising them on small pieces. You find someone with just an acre and they have 150 goats, and you're like, how the hell are they doing it? They zero graze the goats and then they use hay. So they buy all the hay that they feed the animals, or they buy things like sunflower cake, like maize bran, and that's what they give the animals, yeah? That's what they do. So instead of, you know, doing a system like this where you need to get grass and feed them with grass and things like that, they use that system. It's certainly way more expensive though, yeah? So a cheaper alternative would be to get a lot of land and then use the land to have grass, or you free range them on the land, you know, or tether them. I don't know, I don't advise tethering, especially if you're going to be having quite a number of animals. Tethering stresses the animals, so it's not something that I advise. But if you're going to be, you know, raising your animals on the land, most probably you're going to need land. Now, it's certainly not a cheaper alternative if you don't have land. I'm saying it's a cheaper alternative if you do have land. I personally, for example, have about 18 acres, yeah, on a hill somewhere where I'm keeping the goats. And then this is already an acre that I've told you guys I'm going to be, you know, growing grass on. So for me, it does make sense for me to go with these alternatives. But for a lot of people, it doesn't make sense because they don't have the land. So maybe for you, it makes more sense to zero graze the goats and things like that. But in my head, I'm thinking to myself, if you're in an area where, you know, you can have poultry and you can sell the poultry, yeah, you can have chickens and there's market for chickens, instead of zero grazing goats on 1 acre of land, you would rather keep chickens. Now, it's quite different if you want to keep the goats for breeding, yeah? Because if you're going to be keeping goats for breeding, I'm sorry I keep doing this because, I mean, there's house flies around. Like I've told you guys, people are raising cattle in this area. Now it has rained, so because of the decomposing matter, the manure from the animals, you do have some flies around and things like that, so they keep disturbing and coming over my face. Anyway, instead of you know, keeping the goats for meat, if you can keep them as breeders, you know, you get goats and raise them as breeders, and then you start selling goats as breeders, then it's certainly way more profitable than selling goats for meat, yeah? More profitable because you get more money per goat compared to someone who is raising them as, you know, goats for meat. Now, the other thing that I have already talked about is that when it does come to the labor force, then it is way more complicated and more expensive for you to raise chickens. But also, if you do choose to do animals on zero grazing, so whether it's cattle, whether it is you know, goats and sheep, and you're going to be doing them on zero grazing, then it's not going to be a very big difference between doing chickens and doing, you know, these other animals, yeah? Because if you're doing goats on zero grazing, I've seen it with a lot of people, you need to go and cut the hay or cut the grass, then you give it to the goats every day, you know, clean up the area and all those kinds of things. It's not very easy work, yeah? Same thing with cattle, yeah? You need to keep cutting the hay, you know, pick the hay, bring it, give it to them, make sure that water is available, clean the area each and every day or every so often, something like that, yeah? So it's also going to be quite an amount of work. So if you're going to be zero grazing anything, just like it is also with the piggery, yeah? Piggery is also very labor intensive, just like, you know, poultry or anything that's being zero grazed, yeah? Because instead of them going outside there and looking for their own food, you turn to being the supplier of the food, yeah? So that means that you're going to be quite present. You're going to have to be very available for them to feed. Now, if you are the kind of person who wants to start the farm and put in as little effort as possible, then you need to have a lot of land, yeah? You need to have a lot of land so that you have pastures on that land, and then you probably only need one person to look after like 300 goats or 400 goats or even 500 goats. In fact, there's a time we had about 800 goats on the farm and we only had 2 people to look after them, goats and sheep put together. Over 800, and we only had 2 people to look after them because what the hell were they doing? In the morning, they get up, you know, go and check to make sure that the kids have their food and water and everything. They all just live in like one place, and then at around midday or 11, someone goes with them to go graze them first. Then one person stays behind to sweep the place where the goats and the sheep sleep. After an hour, he has finished cleaning, he goes and joins the other person who is herding, and all they do is follow them around. The place is all fenced, you know, using some form of vegetation to fence the place, and then so that means they can't, like, you know, destroy the area or escape and go out. And then in the evening they bring them back. So it's that easy. Yeah, so you can raise quite an amount of animals if you're doing it that way, but that requires for you to have land. If you don't have land, then it's difficult. You can do the same with cattle, yeah, depending on what you're keeping the cattle for. You're keeping cattle for beef, quite easy. If you're keeping cattle for milk, a bit more difficult because you need to milk the cattle in the morning, and that's, you know, quite labor intensive. But again, at a particular point, we had over 150 cattle and we were milking them in the morning. And I think we had like 3 people looking after the cattle. Yeah, so you can imagine, yeah, the 3 people would do the milking for all the cattle, yeah, like the ones that require milking in the morning. Yeah. In summary, if you have little land, you're probably going to have to do chickens or zero graze your animals. Zero grazing your animals or doing chickens means that you're going to have to use more labor on your area, and you should get used to that. But also you're going to have to probably be more present and supervise more. Yeah. But if you have more land, then you can do, you know, cattle, you can do goats and sheep, and they can afford you a bit more free time, you know, to be able to do other things. The other thing that you're going to have to understand again is that chickens generally and pigs are more risky. When it does come to raising them, they're more likely to get sick, they're more likely to die compared to the goats and sheep, and they require way more attention. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't want to put more attention on the animals, then you're going to have to focus on the other things. But the chickens and the pigs certainly bring you more money, of course, because they are more risky. They're going to bring you more money. But again, in the end, it's your decision to make. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Hopefully very soon I'll be showing you guys this place when we've planted our alfalfa that we shall be, you know, taking to the goats. The alfalfa is very nutritious. Now, on the land that I do have, the 18 acres, it's on a hill, and currently I'm grazing the animals, almost free ranging them. Like in the morning, the guys take them out, they herd, and they come back in the evening. But I feel like that's not good enough. I'm having trouble with the neighbors around the area. The animals escape, they go and eat their food and things like that. I consistently have to pay fines, which I don't like, penalties, which I don't like. So what I have decided to do is that I'm going to zero graze the goats and sheep over there, yeah? And so I have started by planting some napier right on the hill itself. I planted some napier on some land that I do have further away. Now I'm also going to plant alfalfa right here. Once this alfalfa and that napier have grown, they'll be sufficient enough for me to not worry about feeding the animals, so that I can put them together in one area, you know, construct a zero grazing unit, and then I can slowly plant more grass around the farm, so that, you know, with time, all the animals are just feeding off, you know, the napier and everything that we planted around, and that should be sufficient to feed all the animals on the farm. So I'm going zero grazing, yeah? I'm going to be zero grazing on about, you know, 18 acres of goats, and hopefully that should get me to like 600 goats and sheep in one area. Yeah, that's my goal. Yeah, if I can have like 600 goats and sheep, then every so often I can sell maybe 300 of them, and then I have money coming in. That would be something that I would love. I would really enjoy it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, smash the notification bell. Catch you very soon with another video. Lots of love. Bye bye.